If you're currently in the midst of trying to understand what your vocation is, maybe you're going through a career transition, maybe you've been searching for your purpose for your entire life and you've never found something that truly hit you and said, like, this is what you're meant to be doing with your life, then I want to talk to you about vocational indecision and why you can't choose the right career path in the first place. And I'm going to give you and explore the most common reason as to why people don't know and can't choose their career path. And my name is Joe Yulee. I'm a philosopher. I'm absolutely obsessed with vocations and career paths and knowing what it is that you're meant to be doing with your life. And I share education here on YouTube, and I host a podcast called Archetypes podcast. I write articles on Substack and Instagram. And I also show people step by step how to choose the right career path with conviction in our Unearthed membership. And the reason I do this is because every single person is meant to know what their calling is. And it's a real tragedy that most people don't know what their calling is. And even if they do, they don't know how to walk the path. And when it comes to knowing your vocation, and if you're stuck in this place of there's so many different options, there's so many different possibilities, I have so many different interests, I don't know which one to choose, then I want to tell you about the most common reason why people in this phase can't choose the right career path. And oftentimes they end up bending to something that doesn't quite fit, or they choose something and they think it's correct, and then 3 months later, 6 months later, or unfortunately, maybe many years later, they realize like that wasn't the thing, this isn't what I'm meant to be doing with my life. And so the most common reason that people don't know what their career path is because they are missing some self-knowledge. They're missing an understanding of pieces of themselves that if they knew about, if they were aware of, they would have the necessary knowledge in totality, right? Parts of yourself that you already know and then parts of yourself that you don't quite know about yet. And that would give them a clear answer as to what it is that they're actually meant to be pursuing. And so there's this problem that arises because of this. Many people already think that they know who they are in totality. They're like, I'm stubborn, I'm somebody that is very social, I'm somebody that is very, very quiet, and maybe I feel a lot of things, where we have these different associations with ourselves and how we see ourselves and who we are. And then there are these other parts of ourselves that we don't know about. If you are to think about your entire life, there's probably a time where you can imagine where you thought you were one way, and then maybe something happened, an event happened, and maybe all of a sudden you're a little bit more courageous than normal, or you're a little bit more out there than you normally are. Even if you were to think of somebody that never drinks and they're very quiet and they're very, reserved, they're pulled back, they're never in the center, and then suddenly they have a couple of shots and they just are out there and they're wild. And that part is there. It's there within them. And only by obviously, drinking in this example were they able to bring that side of themselves out. But it's not necessarily the requirement of a stimulant in order to bring that side of yourself out, because it's there to be seen, it's there to be tapped into. There is this idea within alchemy whereby if you have one side, then you also have the other side. The other side is there. It's called coincidentia oppositorum. And by understanding that there are both sides to it there within you, you can start to say, okay, am I really like this? Or is there another part of me that I haven't really seen, I haven't really got to know yet, I haven't really nurtured? Now, there are many different ways in order to find these other parts of yourself. And when I walk people through this process of knowing their own career archetype, a part of it is a personality expansion, meaning that there are different facets of your personality that you need to explore in order to better understand yourself. If you are to think about this axis, then what I mean by this is a personality axis, meaning that is an example of a very, very common one. We have extroversion and introversion. But for this example, I'll talk about intuition and sensation. So if you're to use this Jungian psychology lens of intuition and sensation, and you're to think about your own personality, maybe you're somebody that leans towards abstraction, that leans towards having more of a openness to seeing things outside of what is essentially right there in front of you. So, for example, if you were to see a light, maybe that reminds you of a story where a light was in it. Say, for example, in the very, very first scene of Harry Potter, or one of the early scenes in the very, very first movie, there is a light or a lamp there, right? So the mind might just go to some other alternative space that shows you an association with the object itself. So you see a light and then suddenly you start to think about some movie that you've seen a while ago, right? That's intuition. It goes to another place, or it goes around an object and doesn't take the full sensory experience in. Whereas someone that is high in sensation, they might take the sensory experience in. So they might see that light that you saw and you jumped off to a movie, but they might start looking at that. They might start looking at the bulb. They might start looking at the covering around the bulb. They might start looking at the stand that it's on, really taking in the object itself. And so while one person really takes in the object itself, another person might bounce off away from that. Now, if you know that about yourself, if you know you're someone that is going to bounce off away from something into another space, then you're able to better understand not only yourself, but also the path that you need to walk, right? People that are high in intuition on this axis, they probably need to be in vocations where they're allowed to use that ability for change. It's very, very common that people in the creative spaces who need to have this constant influx of novelty, constant influx of change within their path, need to have it in the very structure that they're walking. Otherwise, if everything feels too mundane, too routine, too again and again and again, then all of a sudden they're just like waning and like, ugh, this is soul sucking, because they're connected to something that is different from this way of being. And so for some people, they're like, well, you just have to learn some discipline, and every now and then you've got to learn how to balance out these different traits within yourself. They also have to recognize that, hey, this is an area where I'm natural at, I'm gifted at, and I want to organize my work around that side of things. Now, another lens that we end up using is astrology, right? And understanding that if we were to look at someone's natal chart and look at all their planets within their natal chart, the planets are all going to have different agendas, right? If you're to look at Mars, Mars might be very militant. It might say, hey, we just need to go out there and take action, and we need to stop, self-nurturing. We need to go and forge our way in the world. Whereas our moon side might say, hey, you need to nurture this part of yourself. You need to stay in tonight. You need to, go and watch a good movie and chill and have some ice cream and then come again at it tomorrow. And so understanding that all of the planets within our chart have different directions, whether you believe in astrology or not, you're going to start to see that it's human nature to get pulled in these different directions. So we have to become aware of what these directions are so that we can organize ourselves in such a way that we can align our path without always getting pulled back all the time. And this, again, just illustrates that you need to, as you're going through this period of change, as you're going through this period of trying to know what your calling is, that it's deeper than simply thinking through different potential options. Now, it's very, very forgivable for people to say, hey, look, I just want to figure out what path I'm meant to be taking. I have these 10 options. Like, I should just go and choose one. And maybe I write a pros and cons list. Maybe I go through each option with a partner and say, like, that one gets a little bit of holiday pay. If I pick that one, then I will get to be my own boss. If I pick this one over here, then I get to work one-on-one with people. And I really want to work with one-on-one with people instead of just being more of an operator. And so you have this sort of conversation. But this conversation, when it comes to options, is normally a superficial conversation. It's not really getting at what is your soul wanting you to develop in this lifetime. And so this is one of our principles and one of our philosophies, is that we want to walk a soul-led career path. And when I say soul-led, it doesn't mean that I reject money and finances. It doesn't mean that I reject the lifestyle that someone's leading. Not everyone is built for the path of a monk or some sort of mystic that leaves home and leaves all their possessions behind to go and walk that path. But what it does mean is that the soul's development comes first. Because what ends up happening in the modern world is that we have our soul, and it ends up getting worked on in the weekends or in time where we can kind of find space for it, because the majority of our adult life is done and spent on work. And we want to reposition that and reframe it so that you yourself are working on the most important thing, which is your own personal development through the majority of your adult life, so that you can reach what I would call as your exalted form. And so the way to do that is to make your soul development a part and intertwined with the work that you're meant to be doing in this lifetime. And so it has to be soul-led as opposed to soul sometimes, or soul, when I get time for it later on the weekend, or maybe in the morning before work. And it needs to be placed right at the core of what it is that you're meant to be doing. And by doing that, and by allowing your soul to lead you and developing it along the way, it puts you in a really, really unique position where you get to find out who it is that you can be over a long period of time. And you'll get a view on your own personal mission and your calling, and see that happen in real time, and live the experience that so many people, they just don't live, and they just don't experience. And it's, like I said, it's a tragedy that people don't know what their calling is. So this is why we have to explore the personality domain. That's why we also have to explore your own life trajectory, right? Because once again, it's deeper than these sort of superficial, what's the structure of the path that I'm meant to be walking. Now that's really, really important, knowing, do I want to run a business? If I do run a business, is it an online business? Is it a brick and mortar business? If it is an online business, is it a service business? Is it an e-commerce store? All that stuff, that matters, right? All those technical or like structural questions, they matter. But what matters most is connecting in on a soul level as to what it is that you're meant for, what it is that you're born for, and really knowing that down underneath. And that's why you don't start with the options. Because if you mull over the options, you're going to end up pursuing something that you might not actually know for sure is that the real path. It might give you a fuzzy feeling. It might give you this sense of, oh, that sounds exciting. Maybe that's it. But it doesn't give you that deeper underneath hit, that core, like deep buzz. And there's this like, that's how I would like to describe it. There's this like deep humming sound underneath that you have to connect into to really know that that's the calling that you're meant to be pursuing. And that's why you have to go deeper than simply just asking about options. Another way to go deeper on this is to think about your life mythology. Really start to understand, what is my story? And everybody has their own story, their own particular kinds of events. And this is one thing that is also in people's unconscious mind. They're not aware that their story is unique. There are particular things that are happening to you that don't happen to everybody else. There's a particular culture that you grew up that not everyone grows up in. There's particular relationships that you have that not everyone else has. There's a particular partner that you might have that not everyone else has. There's particular happenings and occurrences to you that have shaped you in a particular way. Are you aware of how these things have shaped you? If you're to imagine a kid who got their arm broken when they were really, really young versus a kid that didn't get their arm broken when they're really, really young. Later on, that kid that got their arm broken might be a little bit more hesitant to jump around and be more adventurous than the other one. There are all these different things that shape you, and you want to understand this, because if you understand what's shaped you, then you can once again bring into your attention more of who it is that you are, which is why we go over this idea and understanding of what your life mythology is looking like. Where have you been? And where are you now? Like, how did you get in the position that you're in right now? The job that you're in, or maybe it's the job that you're leaving. Like, what caused you to sign up for it? Was it fate? Was it a friend that recommended the job? Was it you saw this ad pop up and it was in a Facebook group, or it was on LinkedIn? What happened to cause you to go in that direction in life? Are you aware of how you made that decision? Are you aware of how you came to your current circumstances? Because that's also going to help you to gain more self-knowledge of how it is you work, how it is that you operate, how it is that you behave. And knowing that stuff, once again, is going to give you insight into your calling. If you're somebody that only lasts at workplaces for 3 months at a time, and you're just like job hopping and job hopping, like what does that say about you? Does that mean that you should be working with people that are more frequent? Maybe work and align in such a way where you're a freelancer, where you have a lot of new clients all the time, and that gives you the novelty that you need. Now, maybe you are someone that only works in the hospitality industry. Just for some reason, you just keep finding yourself in the hospitality industry. So what is that saying to you? What is it saying about your choices? How did you end up there? And once again, asking these questions helps you to gain more self-understanding of who it is that you are. And it's also why we look at something like these deep-rooted core, what I call these psychological hindrances. I name them becoming barriers. And so there are these particular barriers that if we overcome them, we become more of ourselves. And by becoming more of ourselves, we have this life that's more confident, that's more stable, that's more like, this is my life. There's this excitement that overflows that you actually get to walk that path. And so knowing what your barriers are, so crucial, right? What do you fear? Do you fear that, hey, if I pursue this path and it's successful, there's some part of me that's worried that everyone that loved me is just going to run away from me and leave me and say that I shouldn't have done that, or say that because now you're successful, you don't belong here. Is there a part of you that has that? Maybe there's a part of you that's worried if you start to put yourself out there, other people are going to see that and they're going to be like, why are you doing that? That's lame. You should do something else. You should do something more normal. And if you have to deal with that stuff, you have to be, one, aware of it, and then you have to take action against it, meaning that you have to pursue the path in spite of it. And typically that requires a belief reframing within, followed by constant action that gives you feedback that says like, hey, this is actually a lie that you've been telling yourself. And by pursuing this path, you're actually going towards who it is that you're meant to be doing. And also the doubts or the worries that you had, they're not that true. Or if you do get some rubbish that comes and hits you from people's opinions and whatnot, that you can handle it and that you're good and you can keep moving through it. And just by going, and you can start to get a feel for this, by going across this landscape of understanding yourself, and there's a lot more to this, but to give you this understanding of needing to go outside of just, here's some options, I need to pick some options, and really connecting to, this is who I am, or this is who I think I am. And is this an accurate depiction of who it is that I am in totality? In all that I am, is this really who I am? Really confronting yourself with that question, confronting this idea that you have of yourself and mapping it out more and trying to find these other edges. And by the way, there's always more to find of yourself. And by constantly expanding into this, you get this newfound awareness of yourself, and you can do more and you can be more and you can expand more. That's why you have some people that have these amazing lives, right? Where they are able to not only pursue their purpose, but give back to the world and share and serve the world. And then you have people that are kind of just always taking and pulling back and never taking any risks. Like they haven't taken any, they maybe took one, and they took one risk back in high school, it didn't work out, and they never try again. You get those kinds of people. There's such a wide distance between the two. And these other people are constantly expanding, constantly growing, constantly finding out more about themselves. You'll notice that people that walk a soul-led calling are doing really, really amazing. They have a really defined view of who it is that they are. They're very, very clear. They're like, that's not me, this is me. And I'm going to keep doing this. And they're able to do that because of that level of self-awareness that they have. And when they grow, they notice it and they integrate it back into their vocation and their path. And so I would just leave you with this. If you're somebody that is going through a transition, if you're trying to know what your calling is, what your purpose is, it's likely because there are areas of yourself that you aren't quite aware of yet. And you're in a beautiful place where you're open to taking in this information that is outside the current walls of who you know yourself to be. And I would just encourage you to continue to explore that. And if you want to know how to explore this in a very structured process way, then you can check out the Unearth membership, where I walk members through an 8-week process of really coming to grips with who it is that they are and all these different hidden aspects. I'll get students like constantly about, oh, I didn't realize this about myself. I didn't realize this about myself. All these things are lighting up in my mind. And that's because we take them through this process of seeing the parts of themselves that they don't know about yet, which allows them to unearth their career archetype and walk their path with conviction. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll leave a link below, and I'll see you in the next one.